Hello guys, how are you doing today? Today we have the Year 5 Season 3 PTS Phase 2. This is all the new gear, the changes, stuff like that. I'll read it all out to you guys. I'll be making builds on the weekend, videos for you of the new stuff. Let's get into the video. Okay, so if you're on PC guys, you can preload this, the PTS Phase 2. Size without PTS build on Connect 94 gig. Size if PTS build already on Connect 12.62 gig. Start date tomorrow. End date 22nd Monday guys, so we ain't got that long. Right, so new gear. Palisade Steelworks, I can't really pronounce this guys. 1 piece equipped gives 10% armor on kill. 2 piece equipped gives 60% health. 3 piece equipped is 1 skill tier. Named chest and backpack. Named chest combustor. Talent perfectly explosive delivery. Whenever you throw a skill 1.5 seconds after landing, it creates an explosion damaging enemies within 5 meters. Afterwards, explosions will occur every 5 seconds. Damage scales with skill tier, dealing 25 to 100% damage of concussion grenade. Applies to remote pulse, all turrets, all hives, explosive seeker, cluster seeker, mender seeker, decoy, all traps. Okay, so that's that chest piece guys. Named backpack proxy, talent perfectly tamper proof. Enemies that walk within 3 meters of your hive, turret, remote pulse or decoy are shocked. Arm time 2 seconds, cooldown per skill 8 seconds. I'm assuming that's the same as PvP, but it's EMP I believe. Aegis gear set, 2 piece equipped gives 70% health. 3 piece equipped gives 15% total armor. 4 piece equipped unlock a new unique talent. Talent stoke, get 3% damage resistance for every enemy that is targeting you. The bonus is multiplied by 1 times, where X is the number of agents in your group. Chest and backpack talent, chest bonus, talent deceit. Enemies targeting your decoy also count towards the stoic damage reduction bonus, so you get a lot more resistance. Backpack bonus talent, increase stoic damage resistance bonus from 3% to 4%. Sorry if I'm butchering these words guys. Rugged gauntlets, exotic gloves, talent iron grip, minus 50% recoil penalty with hip firing, minus 50% recoil penalty when blind firing from cover. Not the best. It would have been way better if it was accuracy or weapon handling. That'd be too OP though. New weapons and talents, exotic weapons, Vindictor, exotic rifle, talent Ortiz assault interface. While scoped, the weapon will highlight a random body section of each enemy. The weapon deals 75% weapon damage to highlighted body sections. That sounds interesting. Weapon stats and mode, magazine mod, plus 5 magazine size, muzzle mod, plus 10% optimal range, underbarrel mod, plus 15% weapon stability, optic rail, plus 15% weapon accuracy. Mosquito exotic pistol, talent Mosquito song. Hitting an enemy applies a stack. Stacks are shared between players. At 10 stacks, the enemy will forcefully target the last player to apply a stack for 5 seconds. Stacks deplete every 5 seconds. Activating the effect on an enemy or remove all stacks from other enemies. Weapon stats and mods, magazine mod 15% reload speed, muzzle mod 15% weapon accuracy. That sounds strange, that exotic. Named weapons and talents, behind you weapon talent, deal 40% weapon damage to enemies that are not targeting you. Marksman rifle Brutus M700 carbon, talent perfectly behind you, deals 60% weapon damage to enemies that are not targeting you. I believe the M700 carbon is going to hit harder than the White Death in the next update. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Rifle Whisper M16A2, talent perfectly behind you, deals 60% weapon damage to enemies that are not targeting you. That's a very bad choice of a weapon because M16 is probably the worst weapon in the game. Let me know if you agree guys in the comments. Project Resolve, balancing, conflict, remove turrets from conflict spawn points. Dark Zone, going rogue in a normal Dark Zone now has a 3-second activation timer. Activation time for invaded DZ remains 0.75 as before. It used to be 5 seconds guys, but the feedback made them put it to 3 seconds. Talent Dr. Home, changed proc condition back to target killed from target headshot. PvP only. Fireworks show festive delivery. Concussion grenades become festive grenades. Hitting an enemy with a festive grenade will cause explosions to happen around 2 other enemies within 10 meters, dealing half damage. Still a hell of a lot of damage that for PvP. I think they should personally change the whole talent for PvP, guys. Previously, concussion grenades become festive grenades. Hitting an enemy with a festive grenade will cause explosions to happen around 2 other enemies within 20 meters. Unbreakable talent. Talent changed, reverted back to 50%, 55% armor, repaired PvP. System corruption, 4-piece bonus, changed to 2% bonus, damage from 1%, that's not bad. Intimidate, each stack increased total weapon damage by 4%, damage from 5%. That's good, because Intimidate is pretty OP in the previous PTS phase that I played. Weapons, note the list below includes the changes from phase 1 of the title update 20 PTS and updates made after feedback review. All exotic weapons, third attribute, will be reconfigurable. The Carbine 7 and Stoner LAMG will no longer drop with a perfect talent, which was, I believe, Overwhelm. So when you suppress them you get damage, I believe it was. Assault Rifles, ACR, I'll let you read this, guys. But this was in the previous video I made of the PTS changes. Brand sets, note the images below depicting gear balancing show the overall changes implemented. They include the changes from phase 1 of the title update 20 PTS and updates made after feedback review. So this is the first one, guys. Before, Alp Summit, 20% repair skills, 20% skill duration, 10% skill haste, and then after the feedback, 20% repair skills, 30% skill duration, and 30% skill haste. That's a big change, that's good. China Light, 15% explosive damage, 10% skill haste, 10% stats effects, and they changed it to 15% explosive damage, 20% skill haste, and 20% stats effects. The orange stuff is when it's changed, guys. Electric, 10% stats effects, 20% electricity protection, 10% SMG damage, and all they've changed there is to 30% SMG damage, which is interesting. Empress International, 10% skill health, 10% skill damage, and 10% skill efficiency. That's in the game now. They've changed it to 10% skill health, 10% skill damage, which I'm assuming that's something else because it's still 10% there, and then 10% skill efficiency. Hanayu, 10% skill haste, 10% skill damage, 5% weapon damage. One Piece, 10% skill haste, 10% skill damage, and 10% weapon damage. So all they've done is added 5% weapon damage to it. Murakami knee pads, 20% skill duration, 20% repair skills, 10% skill damage. And in PTS phase 2, 20% skill duration, 30% repair skills from 20%, 20% skill damage from 10%. And then we have R and K, guys, 20% incoming repairs, 10% explosive resistance, and 20% repair skills. They've changed 10% explosive resistance to 25%, 20% repair skills to 40%. Wyvern, 10% skill damage, 10% stats effects, 20% skill duration. They've kept 10% skill damage, they've changed 10% to 15% stats effects, and they've changed 20% skill duration to 40% skill duration. Okay, these are the next brand sets. So before, 10% health, 20% incoming repairs, and 10% hazard. All they've changed is the first piece, 10% to 30%, and they've changed 10% hazard protection to 20% hazard protection. Badger Tough, 10% shotgun damage, 5% total armor, and 10% armor on kill. They've kept 10% shotgun damage, 5% total armor, and all they've changed is the 10% armor on kill to 15%, which they could have added a bit, like 5% more. Bellstone, 1% armor regen, 10% armor on kill, 20% incoming repairs. All they've changed on that brand set is the incoming repairs from 20% to 40%. Brazos, 10% skill haste, 1 skill tier, 20% mag size. All they've changed from that is 20% mag size to 50% mag size. Gilligard, 5% total armor, 10% health, 1% armor regen. All they've changed on that is 10% health to 60% health and 1% armor regen to 2%, which was 3%, I think they should have kept 3%, personally. Golden gear, 10% stats effects, 1% armor regen, 5% total armor. All they've changed on this is 1% armor regen to 1.5% armor regen, and 5% total armor to 10% total armor. The Hasbird guard, 15% headshot damage, 15% marksman rifle damage, 10% stats effects. All they've changed on this is 15% marksman rifle damage to 20%, and 10% stats effects to 20% stats effects. I really don't see why they've put stats effects on a sniper brand set. Baffles me, guys. Lengbow, 20% explosive resistance, 10% skill health, 15% LMG damage. All they've changed on that is 10% skill health to 25% skill health, and 15% LMG damage to 30%. Uzina Getica, 5% total armor, 10% armor on kill, 10% hazard protection. All they've changed on that is 10% hazard to 20% hazard. Then our final brand pieces, Seska, 10% critical hit chance, 10% hazard protection, 10% health. All they've changed on that is 10% health to 90% health, which is a big difference. Douglas and Harding, 20% pistol damage, 20% weapon stability, 20% weapon accuracy. All they've changed on that is 20% weapon stability to 30% weapon stability, and 20% weapon accuracy to 50% weapon accuracy, which is quite a big change, but personally I think they should have just added weapon handling and a different stat. Fenris, 10% AR damage, 20% reload speed, 20% weapon stability, and then all they've changed in that is 20% reload speed to 30% and 20% weapon stability to 50%, same as the previous brand. Grupo, 15% critical hit damage, 15% explosive damage, 15% headshot damage. All they've changed on that is 15% explosive damage to 20%. Petrov, 10% LMG damage, 10% weapon handling, 20% ammo capacity. All they've changed on that brand set is 10% weapon handling to 15% and 20% ammo capacity to 50% ammo capacity, which is a big change. Overlord, 10% rifle damage, 20% weapon accuracy, 10% weapon handling. All they've changed on that one is 20% weapon accuracy to 30% and 10% weapon handling to 30% weapon handling. Walker and Harris, 5% weapon damage, 5% damage to armor, 5% damage to health. All they've changed on that is instead of 5% damage to health, they've put 10% damage to health. And then they haven't changed Yolgi, Araldi Holdings, Providence or Sokolov. But that's all the changes to the brand sets again, guys. They might change them again, but I doubt it. Improvements, Tinker Station. Mobile tinkering. The functionalities of the Tinker Station can also be accessed on the go from inventory in two ways. By pressing M while nothing is highlighted, the player will enter the general tinkering menu. I'm not sure what M is on console, guys, for when that comes out. By pressing M while a specific item is selected, it will allow player to make tinkering operations directly onto the highlighted item. Expertise, no changes made following title update 20 PTS phase 1. It can be accessed from the mobile tinkering menu. I believe the expertise will be 25 in the next update instead of 24. Recalibration and optimization merge both functions into one tab. Tinker optimization can no longer be done up to the value higher than the value stored in the player's recalibration library. Optimization upgrades steps changed. The player will no longer pay the full price of an incomplete optimization step. Example, the user has 10% SMG damage in the library and is trying to optimize an SMG that is currently has 9.7% SMG damage. Since the highest value in the player's library is plus 10%, they will only be able to upgrade by 0.3% and will only pay the material price for the 0.3% portion instead of paying the full price of an upgrade step. That's a good change. Recalibration library, no changes made following title update 20 PTS 1. It has received UI improvements and can be accessed from mobile tinkering menu. Combat gear lock. When joining another player's session, this player joining now has a 1 minute grace period before the combat gear lock applies. Gear lock no longer is affected in the shooting range, so that was good because you have to keep going back and forth, which was kind of annoying. The player can now swap between concussion grenades and current specialization grenades while in combat. Rogue players in the Dark Zone are no longer always gear locked, but combat gear lock still applies. This means that rogue players in the Dark Zone will be gear locked during combat as opposed to PTS 1 when the lock was applied for the whole duration of the rogue stance. And then we have Descent. Added Descent outfits to the NSA store. All 4 different colour variants. Added Vindicator exotic in the NSA store. Descent talent pool rotation now has its own menu where the current rotation and available talents can be checked. That's good. The button prompt for the menu can be found within the Descent entrance AR window. The duration of the rotation and its name is now also displayed. Projects. Daily project, the rewards list is now also included 1 exotic component. Weekly project rewards list now also include 3 exotic components. That's good. So that's all the changes for now, guys. But that's the news for the PTS Phase 2, guys. Thanks for watching and happy hunting.